Neighbors laughed when she built a stone bed, until it stayed 115 degrees F warmer at degrees below. She is doing it again. The neighbors can see her from the ridge, a small figure in a man's coat hauling flat stones from the creek bed one at a time, stacking them on a wooden sledge. She built herself from scrap pine, dragging that sledge through the snow with a rope looped over both shoulders like an ox that has forgotten it is a woman. It is October of 1903 in the Judith Basin. The aspens have already dropped their leaves, and the sky above has that pewter gray. The cold is not coming, the cold is already here. Her name is Maren Solberg. She is 19 years old. She has $31.40 in a tobacco tin, buried under the floorboards of a cabin that does not belong to her until the 1st of November, before the man who does own it, Delbert Couch, arrives. He had told her father this in August, before her father climbed onto a freight wagon. Nobody in Rimrock Flats knows exactly what happened to her father. Some say he is dead. Maren does not say either thing. She simply pulls her sledge and stacks her stones, and does not look at the people watching her from the ridge. Here is what they are watching: a girl who claims she is building a bed out of rocks. What they will not understand until the worst blizzard in 30 years arrives in December, while they are burning through their entire winter wood supply in 3 desperate days, while frozen water pitchers shatter on bedroom floors and frostbite marks grown men's ears. Maren Solberg will be sleeping warm on a stone surface, holding 115 degrees, but that reckoning is 2 months away right now. Harlan Prout is riding his horse. He leans on the pommel and watches her for a good long while before speaking. "What in the Sam Hill are you building, girl?" he calls across the yard. "A bed," Maren says. Harlan Prout stares at her, silent and skeptical. Then he turns his horse around and rides back to tell his wife. By Friday evening, the whole of Rimrock Flats knows the Solberg girl has lost her mind. The wound goes deeper than a missing father. Maren Solberg has been cold before, the kind of cold that is not a temperature but a condition living in your bones. She was 11 the first winter after her mother died, and her father had not yet discovered that whiskey and grief could be mixed into a kind of anesthesia. That winter he had kept the fire burning and held everything together by sheer force, but the following winter he had begun to slip, and the one after that further. By 15, she was the one keeping the fire burning, stretching the food. She understood with clarity that warmth is not a luxury, warmth is survival. She has $31.40, a cord of green pine stacked outside. Not enough, and green wood burns poorly, besides throwing more smoke than heat. She has 2 wool blankets and a buffalo robe, so old fur comes off. She has until November 1st to vacate a cabin that cannot keep her alive. The nearest town of any size is 11 miles east, a long frozen distance. The nearest neighbor willing to take her in is a woman named Agnes Flood. If Maren Solberg does not solve her own problem, no one will solve it. The temperature is 22 degrees by afternoon. It will drop to 8 degrees. She calculated she needs 400 pounds of granite and basalt for heat found. A seam of it, flat slabs, dark and dense as the moon. She pulls her sledge. She does not stop. She has 11 days. What none of the people understand is she is not building a bed, something her grandmother built in Norway, keeping families alive through extreme winters. She is building a steinovenseng, a stone oven bed, a structure so old and so sensible that it predates written history in the North countries. A thermal mass sleeping platform that absorbs heat during the evening fire and releases it slowly, steadily, hour by hour through the night, keeping a human body warm long after the flames. The principle at work is thermal mass. Stone is slow to heat and slow to cool. A granite slab heated to 150 degrees will radiate warmth 12 hours later. The Romans called it hypocaust. The Koreans ondol. In Norway, they called it simply sense. She does not have mortar. This is the first problem. True mortar requires slaked lime and sand and time, none of which she has. She spends the first evening sitting on the floor with her sketch and a pencil outside. The temperature drops below 0 and pine boards contract and snap. Like rifle shots, the fire in the iron stove eats through her green wood at a sickening rate. She thinks about clay 3/4 of a mile south. There is a deposit of blue clay she noticed before, dense plastic cold, but clay when mixed with sand and dried slowly hardens to something approaching the strength of brick. Her grandmother's mortar had not been lime, it had been clay ash and straw mixed wet cob. Some people call it, others call it adobe. Maren calls it the solution to her problem. She starts for the clay deposit before dawn, the work of the first week, breaks her hands hauling stone, in mornings hauling clay, in afternoons mixing clay with ash and dry grass, packing the mixture into a trough made from a split log, covering it with canvas. At night, the neighbors ride past and watch. On Wednesday, Harlan Prout brings his eldest son Curtis. They sit on the fence rail and watch her mixing clay with her bare hands. By gum, says Curtis, she really is building a bed out of rocks. I told you, says Harlan, what happens when winter comes. She gonna sleep on a pile of rocks? Curtis asks. I reckon so, says Harlan, unless she freezes first. They watch from the fence. Maren does not look up. Her hands are cracked and the clay gets into them. The cold makes them burn like fire. She mixes clay. She does not explain. The foundation goes down on the 4th day. She digs out the cabin floor, 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 8 inches deep. Right against the south wall, she layers the bottom with flat stones, filling the gaps with clay mortar, letting each layer cure near the stove before she sets the next. She is building the firebox first. Small combustion chamber at the north end, lined with the densest stone. She has found a dark basalt chipped from a larger boulder with a chisel and a hammer from her father. The chipping takes 2 days and leaves her arm so sore she cannot lift it. Then comes the second problem. Her first batch of cob mortar develops hairline cracks overnight. She finds them in the morning light, thin gray lines running through the clay like the map of a river she does not want to follow. She stares at them, pressing the cracks with her thumbnail, feeling how deep they run. She chips out the compromised sections with the cold chisel. It costs her a day. She rebuilds the mixture with more ash, twice as much as the first batch, adding a greater proportion of straw, the fine stems acting as reinforcement against shrinkage. She read in the Agricultural Almanac that Roman engineers added horsehair to their plaster. She does not have horsehair. She has straw and time and stubbornness of a girl who has already decided she will not fail at this. The rebuilt mortar cures without cracking. She does not smile. She simply moves forward. She builds the flue channel next. This is the heart of the system, the serpentine pathway for hot gases through which the fire's hot gases will travel before escaping through the small clay chimney at the end. She has studied the principle carefully in that tattered 1891 almanac discussing the efficiency of Russian fireplaces. The longer the path the hot gas must travel, the more heat it surrenders to the mass. Her channel will run in 3 parallel passes beneath the sleeping surface, doubling back twice so that the gas travels nearly 15 feet before it exits every degree the stone gains. She packs clay mortar between every stone. She uses flat capstones, the largest and densest found, bedded in mortar, tapped level with the back of her hatchet. The platform is flat. It stands 14 inches above the floor. On the 7th evening, Hilda Morrow comes to the door. Hilda Morrow is 55, face like weathered rawhide eyes that have judged most things harshly. She stands in the doorway and looks at the stone platform and says nothing for a full minute. What is that? She says. It is not a question. Hilda stands in the doorway. A heated bed, Maren says. A channel runs underneath. The fire heats the stone. Hilda Morrow looks at her. Where'd you learn a fool thing like that? My grandmother, Norway. Hilda looks at the platform. You do the mortaring yourself. Clay and ash. Maren says. Hilda walks back out into the dark. The next morning, there is a small sack of dried beans on Maren's doorstep. Old man Jensen rides by the following morning, spitting tobacco juice. That girl's gonna wake up froze stiff on her rock pile, mark my words. His boy looks with curiosity, but Jensen yanks his horse around. Hoofbeats fade. The money runs out on the 13th day. Not all of it, but nearly. She spent $11 on a chimney pipe, sand, and a new hammer handle, she has $20 left, and winter has not yet officially begun. Her hands look like they've been through a threshing machine. The knuckles are cracked. She wraps them in strips of a flour sack and keeps working. Curtis Prout rides past on the 14th day and stops his horse. I reckon come December, you'll be begging my mother for a place by the fire. Ain't natural a girl living alone, you oughta find a husband before you freeze. She picks up her hammer and goes back to work on the 15th day. She runs the first test, fire a few sticks of dry wood. She watches the smoke. It pulls. The draw is good. She lays her hand and waits 30 minutes. Nothing. She adds more wood. She waits 45 minutes. And she feels it under her palm, a warmth that is the memory of warmth. She kneels on the platform, both hands flat, and closes her eyes. The surface is warm. She adds more wood and runs the fire for a third hour. Then she banks it. The air above the platform is already 41 degrees warmer than the air at the door. She sleeps on it that night, wakes, and the stone beneath her is holding its warmth. Outside, the temperature has dropped to 11 below. Young Thomas Spence is sent for grass. He peers through the cabin window at the stone platform, eyes wide, and runs home. Report that the girl is not frozen. She is sitting at her table eating without her coat. Dorothea Spence tells two women the rumor moves through Rimrock Flats like warmth through stone. Marin allows herself one moment of tears. Then she gets up and starts building refinements. She adds a wind cap from a flattened tin can to fix the chimney smoke leak. Hardwood is scarce, so she begins saving every scrap of dense deadfall, hoarding it like gold. She discovers heating for 2.5 hours can hold warmth for 14 hours. A woman appears at her door on the 21st day. Dorothea Spence with 2 children. She has heard about the stone bed foolishness, witchcraft, or Norwegian nonsense, but she heard the girl wakes warm while others burn wood like a mill fire. The children's cheeks are red. The younger girl stops fussing immediately, simply looks around with the calm expression of a body recognizing warmth. Dorothea looks at the platform, then at Marin. Can you show me how it works? Marin shows her everything: thermal mass, flue channels, and the mortar recipe. She shows the grandmother's sketch. Dorothea listens with the attention of one seeking survival. She asks if Marin will help build one. She offers salt pork and preserves. Marin says yes. November arrives, and Delbert Couch arrives, with it riding his grey mare from the south, up from the south pasture, with his hands tucked in his coat pockets and jaw set. He has come to take his cabin back. He ties his horse and goes inside. The cabin is 37 degrees warmer than the outside. Ere he stops in the doorway, the stone platform is radiating heat like a banked forge, steady, even and almost physical. The smell is stone dust and old wood smoke and something faintly mineral. I built a heating structure, Marin says. It's part of the floor and the wall. Delbert Couch stands in the warmth and looks at the girl who built it. I'm going to winter in Lewistown. I'll be back in April. You can stay. He rides away without explaining. Marin suspects the stone bed explained it for her. The true cold comes on the 6th of December 1903, and it comes without drama, slipping down from the north on a wind that starts at 30 miles per hour, building through the afternoon until fence posts are singing and snow is horizontal, scouring everything with crystalline violence. By nightfall, the temperature is 31 below zero. By midnight, it reads 44 below. By dawn, 52 degrees below zero. The storekeeper Obert writes the number in his ledger and puts an asterisk. The wind drives the cold through every gap in every structure in the basin. It finds the cracks between logs where chinking has dried and fallen. It makes the insides of buildings feel like the outsides only. Slightly delayed in Harlan Prout's properly built timber frame house, the stove runs all night and all day. The family huddled nearest to it rotates through a kind of vigil, feeding the wood water in. The pitcher on the far side of the bedroom freezes solid by 3. Harlan's wife develops a cough on the 2nd day that will not leave until March. They burn through their winter wood supply at a rate that will leave them short. Curtis Prout wakes on the 2nd morning to find that his stove has gone cold. The temperature inside his cabin is 14 degrees above zero, the same as his outhouse. Wrapped in every garment owned, he sprints to the outhouse. His ear is briefly exposed. His right ear will carry the yellow-white mark of frostbite for the rest of his life. He spends the days at his father's house burning wood for 8 people, and thinking Agnes Flood's stone chimney allows such a draught that her hearth fire is essentially outdoors, consuming wood at a ruinous rate and heating only. A radius of 6 feet, she hangs blankets over doorways, moves her bed, and loses 2 chickens in the barn. Agnes is cold for 3 consecutive days. Without any interruption, old man Jensen fares worst of all. He never trusted Norwegian tricks. His cabin is insufficient for this winter. His water barrel freezes solid, his door swells and jams. He kicks it open, cracking the frame. He wraps himself in everything he owns, sitting near the stove. Without sleeping, he thinks about the girl on her rock pile. Maren Solberg heats her platform for 2.5 hours, using her small reserve of hardwood. Feeding the firebox, steadily watching the smoke pull strong and clean through the clay chimney pipe, she lays her hand on the sleeping surface every 20 minutes to gauge the temperature. When the stone is too warm to hold her hand flat, she banks the fire. Then she wraps herself in the buffalo robe and lies down on the warm stone. The wind shrieks at the cabin, finding the cracks it has always found and entering the air directly above the stone platform. Does not drop in the same way stone surrenders warmth slowly, the way the earth itself surrenders warmth without hurry at 2 a.m. while neighbors shiver and stack garments. Maren Solberg is warm. The air at the platform is 63 degrees. The stone is holding 85 degrees. The fire has been dead for 8 hours. The cabin is silent save for the wind. The outside air 52 degrees below zero. The stone sleeping surface 85 degrees above zero. A difference of 137 degrees between the killing air and the platform while neighbors burn wood and freeze their water and mark their ears. She is warm. She has not burned a stick of wood in 8 hours. She lies in the dark. On the 3rd morning, the wind drops and the sky goes to high, clear, singing blue. People begin to emerge from their houses to survey the damage and count their losses. Harlan Prout burned 2 cords of wood. Curtis Prout touches his frostbitten ear. Agnes Flood begins the grim arithmetic of 2 dead chickens and wood she cannot replace. Maren Solberg walks out into the cold, clear morning. Her woodpile is largely intact. She has 7/8 of her hardwood remaining. She is not tired. She has slept. Curtis Prout sees her from the fence line and stops. He stares at her for a long moment. Then he says in a voice without his usual performance, just a man speaking, "You all right?" "Fine," Maren says. "You?" He is quiet. Then, "How warm did it stay?" "Inside, I mean." 63 degrees in the air above the bed. Fire had been dead 8 hours. Curtis looks at his frostbitten ear, which he can feel, a painful throbbing reminder. "I reckon I'd like to see that bed sometime," he says with newfound quiet respect. "Come look whenever you like," she says, and goes inside. Harlan Prout arrives that afternoon alone. He stands in the doorway and looks. The structure itself, the careful stone and mortared channel, speaks for itself. "How long did it hold heat?" Harlan asks. 14 hours, Maren says. "And you were warm?" "I was warm." Harlan is quiet. He believes himself to know cold country, but he was wrong. "My wife's got a cough," he says finally, "from the cold 2 nights straight." Even with the stove going, he looks at the massive warm stone structure. "I'm sorry to hear it," Maren says. Her voice is calm and steady. "You think a person could build something like this for a bedroom?" Harlan asks. "Yes, if you have the right stone and patience. For the clay work," he looks at her. "I got stone. I reckon I could find patience." She tells him everything: thermal mass, serpentine channels, and the right mortar mix. She does not make it small to be polite. She gives him the whole. He listens the way a man listens when he has decided to learn something. Old man Jensen appears the following morning. He stands at the door and looks an expression between stubbornness and the thing that comes after. He says nothing. He does not speak for almost a minute. The cabin is warm and still. Then he says, "My water barrel froze solid." His pride is entirely broken. "I know," Maren says. "I heard." She stands by the massive warm stone platform. He looks at the platform, he says, and every word costs him. How's it work? She tells him how it works. She explains the thermal mass and the flue. He listens. He does not say he was wrong. He does not have to. Second winter and third came. Maren Solberg was still in the cabin indefinitely. The stone platform had been improved twice. The channel lengthened, capstones replaced with basalt. She helped build 4 others, one for Dorothea Spence and her children, one for the Prout household. The conversion of the timber frame skeptics was complete, one for the Ekberg family, who arrived in 1905 with willingness to learn, and a smaller version for Agnes Flood, who arrived with preserved plums and silence. Each platform was different, fitted to its space and its builder's circumstances, but each carried the same principle. The earth holds heat the way it holds everything, slowly and generously and without any drama. A person who builds with it has made a kind of peace that cannot be taken away. She thought about this. Sometimes lying on the warm stone in the deep of winter, she heard the crow call the earth grandmother, which she thought was exactly right. Grandmothers know things. The young are in a hurry to move past the knowledge of patience and mass, and the slow release of stored warmth. You cannot argue with stone. You cannot rush it. Build carefully and trust the work. Her grandmother said, the fire is the prayer, the stone is the answer. Maren thought this was old women's talk. Now she understood it as engineering. The fire is temporary, consuming, dramatic. It burns, and it goes. The stone takes what the fire gives and holds it, and gives it back in the cold center of the night, in the dark hours when warmth is needed. You cannot feed a fire in your sleep, but you can lie on warm stone. She was not a remarkable person, Maren Solberg. She was solving a problem using the oldest tools, knowledge passed down, material at hand, and patience applied, willingness to be thought foolish by people who had no reason to think differently. Every laugh from the fence line had been a coal in the firebox of resolve. Resolve had hardened like cob mortar in a slow fire, and she built it. She kept her grandmother's sketch in her pocket until the paper fell apart. She drew a new one from memory, folded it, and kept it in the same pocket. She showed it to anyone who wanted to learn the community of stone. Perhaps you are sitting somewhere cold right now looking at a problem others cannot solve. Perhaps neighbors are at the fence line, and the conventional approach has never held warmth. Somewhere in your history there may be a grandmother's knowledge waiting, something old and strange. The earth holds heat. The stone holds heat. What is built with patience holds. In the blue hour before dawn, a girl lies on warm stone and is not afraid. The fire has been dead for 8 hours. The stone is still giving back warmth. That image has not gone cold in 120 years.